Okay, so this is my little seminar on doing mock trial in person. I forgot to record the first few slides, so I'm gonna go back through them and just do a little voiceover. So this is how to dominate without saying a word. So this is about all the intricacies and nuances of actually being in person that you just don't have to worry about on Zoom. So there's going to be a number of things we're going to go through because there are tons of ways that you can score points for yourself. You can lose points for yourself, but also you can make opposing counsel lose points. You can make them look bad, and you can really make yourself stand out and your team stand out by just small little things that you can do that will add up throughout the course of a round. Okay, so before we get started, general explanation of how the courtroom's set up in case you have never been in trial before. The plaintiff or prosecution side is always going to be the table that is closest to the jury. And that will almost always be the same side that the witness stand will be on. Okay, so you'll see wacky configurations and setups of courtrooms, but what will always be consistent is wherever the jury box is, that's where the plaintiff's or prosecution counsel table will be. And that will be the side where the witness is. Okay, so if this was flipped and the jury was on the other side, then those two tables would be flip flopped. All right, so when you're in person, there are three rules to live by. And if you remember these three rules and you internalize these three rules and you never forget them, then you will be okay no matter what happens. Okay, rule number one, they see you. Number two, they feel you. And rule number three, they don't know. So you're probably wondering what I mean by any of that. So let's go through them one at a time. Rule number one, they see you. Who are they? Everybody. The judge, the jury, the spectators, everybody in the room, everybody who's watching, they are watching. What do they see? They see everything. They see how you sit, stand, walk, talk, breathe. They see how you confer with co-counsel, opposing counsel. They see how you interact with the judge. They see it all. Okay? And when do they see you? Always. They see you when you walk in, when you're taking a break, when you're competing, not competing, when you're out in the hallway in between rounds and they happen to be walking by. They see you. They're paying attention. Okay. So you need to keep that in mind that no matter what you're doing, no matter where you are, they are watching. That goes for attorneys, that goes for witnesses. Okay. They're paying attention and it matters and it impacts how they're perceiving you and how they perceive you when they first walk in the room before the rounds even started. That's going to impact how they score you, whether it's explicitly or implicitly. It creates that impression of you that is going to carry you the rest of the way. Okay. So, rule number two, they feel you. They're 10 feet away from you. Okay. They can tell how you're feeling. You can't fake it. Okay. There's no way to get around it. They know. All right. There are a lot of people that take the view of you should fake it till you make it kind of idea. I don't agree with that typically because they can tell when somebody is shaking in their boots. They know, they can tell. You can't fool them. They're right in front of you. Okay. So the negatives to that are if you're nervous, scared, frustrated, anxious, right? Any of those things, they know. They can tell when you are absolutely terrified. They can tell. And so if you are nervous and you're scared, anxious, or you're angry, frustrated, upset, right? They can tell and you can't hide it from them. Okay, so it's going to bite you in the ass because if it's bad, right? If you need to be anything else, then they're going to know, right? You're not going to be able to hide it and it's going to get in the way of whatever you need to be conveying to them. Okay? But the positive side is that if you are calm, collected, confident, okay, it's going to make a difference. They can tell. If you are calm, you're at home, you are confident, this is your courtroom, they can tell that too. Now, the big thing is that this year, especially, nobody that you're going against has ever competed in person before. So they're all going to be terrified. They're all going to be scared. They're all going to be shaking their boots, and none of them are going to know what to do. Okay. So if you can go out there and you're calm, collected, and you own the room, it's going to make you stand out tremendously. Okay. And that's going to make you score better. Because if you are the confident one, you are the one in control, and this is you could be out here all day. You love it. It's going to make you look so much better, and it's going to impact your performance in every way possible. It's going to make your crosses better. It's going to make your direct smoother. It's going to make your statement more enticing, more believable. And so you have to keep that in mind, that they can sense you, they feel you, and they know, and you can't hide it from them. It's not like in Zoom where you're on a screen and you can just turn your screen off when you're done. They see you all the time. Rule number 1. And rule number 2, they can sense exactly what's going on with you.
Okay. All right. So that's another big key, is that you have to get to a place beforehand where you are ready to roll, where you're confident, where you can walk into a courtroom in front of strangers that are going to be judging you and be ready to be confident and dominate. Okay. Rule number 3, they don't know. If you mess up, you say something you're not supposed to say, you skip something, right? Nobody has any idea what you're supposed to say. Okay. When you practice as much as we do, it can be easy to get into a round and realize, oh, I forgot, I missed a sentence, or I missed a question, or I said it the wrong way. And if you fixate on that, you can unravel quickly. Because with the first 2 rules, they see you and they can tell, right? So if you're in front of them and you mess up, and you make it clear that you messed up, they're going to know, right? But if you take the approach of, I know my stuff, and if I say it a little bit different, who cares? They don't know, right? It's not going to sound any different. They have no clue how it's supposed to sound, okay? So what you don't want to do is get panicked, right? Freeze up, start looking for the exact words that you have written in your script. It's not going to help you, right? Because all that time, right, they can tell that, oh, he just forgot something. Now he's searching for the right words. It's obvious, right? So what you do is you have to trust yourself, okay? Because if by the time you get into trial, right, you should be so prepared. You should know the package so well that if you don't remember exactly what that sentence was, right, you should know the material to the point where you know what points you're making. You know what it is, and you have to trust your gut of, I know what I want to say, and make something up on the fly that makes the same exact point. Because whether or not you say a couple words different, right, you say a couple sentences out of order, usually what will happen is you'll find your way again. You realize, oh, I don't remember what I'm supposed to say next. You just give another sentence because you know the packet, and then it'll kind of click back to you of like, oh yeah, this is where I'm going with this, right? If you trust yourself and you don't worry about getting everything verbatim, that's when you're going to be able to overcome where all of a sudden you just have where your mind goes blank, right? And it'll happen. It will happen. It happens to everybody. And it's just trust your preparation as opposed to trying to cling to whatever you wrote. Trust that you know what you're doing, that you're going to be fine, because nobody knows, right? They have no clue what you're supposed to say. Okay. But most importantly, you have to be yourself in trial. Okay. You can't try to be someone you're not. You have to find what your style is and how you best advocate for your side. And you have to be it. Because if you try to fake, right, like a lot of people are in favor of like trying to fake confidence and fake, a personality. I don't personally agree with that, just because it makes it very difficult when you get nervous, when things don't go right. If you are being something that you're not, it's very difficult to hang on to that and also continue to, fix the problem on the fly and adapt, right? So if you can build an advocacy style that is you don't have to worry about I got a weird objection, or they sustained something stupid and now I got to make something up on the fly. I don't have to worry about making sure I say it to sound exactly like I've been sounding. If that's just who you are, then you're going to be fine. All you need to do is, all right, how do I get where I want to go? boom, ask that question. I'm going to say this, this objection response instead, right? And that's how you can kind of bridge that gap by eliminating that needing to translate it into whatever you are trying to be as an advocate. Okay. So there are going to be three main portions of the things that we're going to talk about. So there's going to be practical stuff. We're going to go through how competitions actually work when we get there. And then we're going to go through some practical stuff that we will do before the round, during the rounds, and then after the rounds. We're going to go through some procedural stuff as to just what you actually do and when, as far as pretrial, objections, evidence, and impeachments. Okay, and then we're going to talk about some strategic stuff that we will do, that stuff as far as our body language, your voice, some strategic things that you will do with your objections, and where you're going to stand at various points of the trial. Okay, so before we get going, anybody have any questions? All right, so first, I'm not sure if we're going to be online or, yeah.
You click on the thing.
Oh. Okay. All right. So at opening ceremonies, I don't know if it's going to be online or in person, if we'll even be allowed to go there. But generally, the way it'll work is they'll make a random order of the teams. And then team number one will get to choose any other team in the competition that they're going to face in round one. And then the team that they choose gets to pick which side they go. Okay. So if we are the number one team, right, and we choose Pace, that we want to face Pace in round one, then Pace gets to choose. They could say, we want to go prosecution. So then we will then have to go defense. So we get to pick our opponent, but we don't get to pick our side, right? And vice versa. If somebody challenges us, then we will get to pick our side, right? And so that will go until there will be 6 matchups because there are 12 teams. And then basically it's going to go depending on who wins and loses. It'll get matched up accordingly for the subsequent rounds. We won't get to pick anything after that. It'll kind of just be however the rounds fall. The rest of the weekend, we're going to have either 3 or 4 preliminary rounds with probably 2 or 3 judges scoring per round. So we'll have anywhere from 6 to 12 ballots that we will have, either won or lost. And then at the end of the preliminary rounds, there are going to be 4 top teams that are going to go to the semis, and then the winners face off in the finals. Okay. So before the round, council table. Eva, again, will tell you, it's very important to organize your documents. Okay. So we're going to have a case box that's going to have multiple copies of every single thing in the case. We're going to have multiple copies of every statement, every piece of evidence, et cetera, et cetera. And then we will have them set up on council table, nice and neat, so that when the judges walk in, right, they see that, right? And you will see teams that their council table looks like a mess, right? And that in and of itself, as soon as they walk in the room, judges notice that. Okay. And it's for a practical matter, it also is very helpful when you need something. If you have a pile of just disorganized stuff, it can be very difficult on the fly. If co-counsel needs a document, I can't find it to give it to them. And then everyone has to wait awkwardly as you guys rifle through stuff, and it looks very unprofessional. Okay. You're going to have a legal pad in front of you, and we're going to have sticky notes to be able to take notes and write on sticky notes to each other during the round, anything that we need to keep track of, or if we need to say something, because you don't want to be sitting there having full-on conversations if you can help it, because they are watching. So writing notes is the easiest way to, convey a message without having to worry about it getting, lost in, because you're all whispering. Meet and confer. So then we'll have where we meet with opposing counsel before the round. We'll talk about various things of what their names are, their witnesses that they're going to call, the genders of their witnesses. If they have any demonstratives that they want to show, we'll get a chance to see those before the round, and then we'll talk substantive motions with them. And we'll agree to certain things that we might agree. Okay, we'll go ahead and pre-admit, exhibit 1. And then in pre-trial, we'll take care of that and let the judge know it's going to just go ahead and be in evidence. Okay. So when you go in person, it's a lot different than on Zoom, because on Zoom, because of how everything is on Zoom, there's that distance between you and opposing counsel. Whereas when you're in person, you immediately are getting a feel for your opponent. Okay. So you always want to be nice to them, right? Some teams will be jerks on purpose. We don't do that. It's just unprofessional. And in my opinion, I think it's weak that you have to try to be an ass to get ahead of them. Okay. So we're going to take it very seriously. We're going to be polished. We're going to know exactly what we're talking about, so that when we do it, they will walk away from meet and confer when they go to get ready for the round, knowing this is going to be a tough round, right? South Carolina is good. They know what they're doing, right? We want to give them that impression before we ever start the trial, okay? Because that right there, that gives you an edge, okay? Finally, before the round, you want to explore the courtroom. So we want to walk around, just kind of get a feel for, you'll see all kinds of weird shapes and setups of wells, small, large, like this courtroom, for example, it's very narrow, as far as the width of the well to the jury, but it's deep. So you want to get a feel for it for when when you're doing your statements of where you want to be standing, when you do certain things, cross, direct, where you want to be standing. So before the round's a good opportunity when no one else is there to kind of just feel it out. You want to do that because you don't want to be out here for the first time when the judges are here and it be like, I don't know where to stand because this courtroom's weird. Okay. That's where you want to take the opportunity to say, okay, well, normally I like to be kind of here at this part of my statement, but I'm going to end up being behind this witness stand, for example. That's not going to work. So I need to kind of maybe shift how I move to make sure that I'm ready. Okay. During the round. So when the judge walks in, you need to stand as soon as he comes in. I don't know if any of you have been to court, work or whatever, or, went to the internal comp, you would have seen that it's anytime the judge enters the room, judge and jury, they're all coming together, you should stand immediately. Stand, don't talk, don't fidget, stand up, right? Because of the rules, right? They're going to be looking at you. They're going to notice you. That's their first time that they're going to get an impression. So you want to stand up immediately, look professional, confident, right? Stand firm and still. During the round, when you're speaking to the judge, you should not talk to the judge until you're fully standing up still, right? You don't want to be talking to the judge as you're standing. You don't want to be bumping your chair, right? You want to be standing, take a beat, then speak to the judge, okay? You never speak to him while you're sitting down, and you don't speak to him while you're standing up, okay? When you're doing objections, you stay standing until the judge has ruled on the objection. So if you object hearsay, he might ask you to clarify. You say it's an out-of-court statement being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. He's going to then look to the other side. They're going to respond to it, right? You stay standing. He might come back to you. He might go back to them, and you're going to stay standing until he decides, overrule. And then you say, yes, Your Honor, and then you sit back down, okay? All right. When you're actually doing things like objections or pre-trial, if opposing counsel is talking, you wait until they're completely done. Then the judge usually is going to look at you, and that's kind of your signal to start talking. So that's a big difference from Zoom, where it's hard to tell when the judge wants you to talk and when not to talk, and it's kind of normal to sometimes people talk over each other. You should not ever talk over somebody in person, because when you're standing right here, right on cross, and they object, the judge is right here. You should know when he wants you to talk, right? He's right there. He'll look at you, right? So you have to be extra careful, because you don't get that cushion that they will give you on Zoom, where everybody's kind of has a hard time with it. In person, you have to really make sure that you're not cutting off the judge, cutting off opposing counsel, because those are the little things that the judges are not going to like, okay? Don't need to ask to be heard unless the judge is like really not letting you respond to objections at all, and it's something where you really need to make it, but rare. Okay. Because again, he's going to look at you. So that's your cue. Read the judge. You want to watch because the judge will let you know when they want you to talk. So just wait. And if they don't come to you sometimes, that's just the way it goes, right? Sometimes you're not going to get to say every last thing, every last argument that you have. Okay. Lastly, when you're arguing a motion or an objection to the judge, you do not ever look at opposing counsel. Don't address opposing counsel. Everything is to the judge, okay? You pretend as if the argument opposing counsel is making is just coming from the ether, okay? You don't want to look at them. Don't talk to them. Everything should go through the judge. They talk to the judge will talk to you, and then you talk back to the judge, right? We don't care. We don't look over there. We don't, all right? Because it can get chippy and it can get unprofessional, and you want to make it clear that we are just talking to the judge. So if they say something stupid, that's annoying, doesn't matter, we're not talking to them. We're talking to the judge. So we don't get upset. We don't get frustrated. We talk to the judge the way that you always talk to the judge, calm and respectful. Okay. And then after the round, you're going to, after we finish rebuttal, we'll sit, be dead silent. The judges are going to take however long they need to finish filling out their ballots. Then they're going to give them to the bailiffs. The bailiffs will take them out of the room to wherever they tabulate all the scores. And we're going to sit here in dead silence. Okay, again, even though the scores are gone, you still want to maintain that professionalism in front of the judges. Okay, at some point they will get the all clear that we're good to do comments, that there's no problem with the ballots. They got to make sure that they added everything up. They'll come back in, they'll tell us you're good to go. Judge will then give us their comments, okay? Goes without saying, be respectful, be courteous, be attentive. But at the end of the day, we don't listen to judges. So you want to show, you don't want to let them know, I don't care what you say, but for all intents and purposes, we don't care what they say. Okay, our coaches know mock trial way better than any judges that we're going to see. And if they do say something that is helpful, your coach will tell you that that's helpful. But you'll have judges that'll hate something that you've been specifically coached to do. That's just the way it goes. But we don't change what we do just because the next round you may have somebody that loves it. So if you just change based on the judges, you're going to end up fluctuating all over the place, and then it's not going to be good. So that's why we do what we do, because most of the time it's going to work. Okay, and then after they're done, going to shake hands with opposing counsel, go up, shake the hands of the judges, and then we'll get our stuff together, and then we'll leave. Okay. Any questions about any of that? All right, pre-trial. If possible, we want to be the first team to speak. It's a subtle dominance thing of, even if you're defense, right? P usually speaks first anyway, but if you're defense, if you can speak up without seeming like you're chomping at the bit, right? Make it seem natural, confident. You ask, Your Honor, may we make appearances before we get into pretrial matters? Then you'll introduce yourselves, right? Then they'll go back to the prosecution. And especially as defense, it can take the wind out of the prosecution a little bit because they don't even get to speak first. Okay. Not a big deal, but it's a little thing that you can do sometimes that can throw a team off from the beginning because they're planning on getting to speak first and now they have to wait for you. So the way we do introductions is whoever's going to be doing introductions or housekeeping will stand. They'll introduce themselves. Hi, my name is Dante Esposito, and today I'll be joined by my co-counsel, Ms. Danielle Darrow. Then you will stand up. Good afternoon, Your Honor. And then you'll sit back down. And then if you have a client at the table, we don't have a party in this case, but let's say we call Jolene defense, you would say, my name is Eva Diaz, and today I'm joined by my co-counsel, Mr. Travis Red. Good afternoon, Your Honor. And Your Honor, today we represent the defendant, Ms. Jolene Tramer. And then she would stand up and she would say, good evening. So when you get into housekeeping, you're going to want to get several preferences from the judge. You got to ask what they want you to do, because you want to make sure that you're doing everything the way that the judge wants it done, because every judge has different ideas of the way that you should do things. So movement about the well. 95% of the time, they're going to tell you, yes, you can move freely about the well. Just ask if you're going to approach the witness or the bench. Okay. So all that means is that when you come out, you don't have to ask to, Your Honor, may I make use of the well for opening statements? They may ask you to do that. They may say you need to ask permission to use the well. And then that's just every time that's what you need to do. But overwhelming majority, they're going to say, feel free to use the well. They may say, ask permission to approach the witnesses and the bench. And so whenever you're approaching, Your Honor, may I approach with what's been marked as Exhibit 1, whatever. Okay. Placement of exhibits. So when you enter exhibits into evidence, when you're done with them, they need to be tendered to the bench or wherever the judge wants you. So he may say, once you've entered it into evidence, just put it like right up here. Okay. So if we're doing this, and I got the picture of the pothole, you go through all the foundation, you enter it, right? And you need to know, where do I put it when I'm done with it, right? And so you would do that like at the end of this statement, right? At the end of your direct, which we're going to get into in a minute. But you just need to know where he wants you to put it, right? He may want you to put it up here. He may want you to put it down here. He may want you to give it to the jury. You have to ask, though, because you don't want to be everybody putting the evidence in different places, and then at the end of trial, nobody knows where anything is. Okay. You need to make sure that they're cool with objections being held outside the presence of the jury. The jurors will be here and they need to be able to hear the objections. But in real life, if you make an objection, usually they're going to have you either approach the bench so that the jury can't hear, or they'll send the jury out. Okay. So if you get judges that aren't familiar with mock trial, they may not understand that speaking objections are normal, where you just stand up, object, and in open court, we argue the objection. Okay. So you need to ask their preference for that, because they may say, you need to assume that the jury's here unless you ask that it be constructively outside. So you'll need to objection, Your Honor, hearsay may be heard outside the presence of the jury. And then he'll say, yes, we'll assume the jury's out. And you need to do that every time. Because then if you don't, they're going to ding you for it because you didn't listen. Okay. All throughout this, you need to be writing down notes of what they say, because you're not going to remember throughout trial, and you need to be able to look to it quickly. Because if you mess something up or you misunderstood and the judge says, oh, counsel, what did I ask you about, where did I ask you to put exhibits? Like you don't want to be caught where you're like, I don't remember, right? Or if you're trying to remember too, you need to have somewhere to look. Okay. So you want to be writing it down as the judge is telling you. Now, if it's the person who's doing housekeeping or your co-counsel, it doesn't matter. But somebody needs to be keeping track of what the judge wants you to do, because it's really easy to forget and just get used to, oh, well, this is what we always do. And then the judge will yell at you in the middle of the round. You never want to get yelled at in the middle of the round by the judge for not listening, because it's a very easy mistake, but it can cost you big and it makes you look like you're not listening. Okay. Brett said, everyone sees what you're saying. We need to work on our poker faces. You are stone. All right, objections. Okay, so we're going to sit on the edge of our seat. So especially in this courtroom, right? These chairs are loud as hell. You do not want to be having that every single time you stand to object, okay? Because they're not even going to hear you, okay? So you're going to have the chair out. You may have a courtroom where it doesn't really matter all that much, but it doesn't matter. It makes it easier on you either way. So you want to have your chair out enough so that you can be sitting on the edge of your seat, paying attention, so you can stand straight up without hitting the chair, moving it back, right? So you can stand straight up tall without moving anything, while still being comfortable. Okay. So little things like that matter, because if you have to push your chair all the way out, stand up, right, it becomes a distraction. So you want to be able to stand up as quickly as possible without rushing, because you don't want to stand like, like you're jumping up, like you're rushed, or you really need to get this objection out. You want to be able to just stand up smoothly, objection, Your Honor, hearsay. And so the smoother you can do little things like that, you can tell the difference when you have a team that is, everyone in the room is now waiting for this chair to stop, squeaking, which happened like in our semifinal round in this room. There were a couple times where the team we went up against, that's what happened. They were like objecting, but it was like they had to restate the objection because nobody heard it. Okay. You don't want to rush when you go to object, right? Because it's also, if you're nervous, it's going to just amplify all the nerves, right? It is, if you act calm, it will actually help you be calm. And if you act anxious, it will make you more anxious. And so little things like that, of if you're jumping up, objection, Your Honor, hearsay. The chances are when they're like, okay, why is it hearsay? Your Honor, this is an out-of-court statement being offered for the truth of the matter, and you're going to just work on it, right? As opposed to you stand up, objection, Your Honor, hearsay. Why is it hearsay? Your Honor, this is an out-of-court statement being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. Everything works together where if you are standing slowly and confidently, you'll talk slowly and confidently, okay? So little things, they add up throughout the course of the trial, okay? So as I said, you stay standing, you only look at the judge when the objection's going on, and read the judge on objections, okay? The judge, you will be able to tell if they think that opposing counsel is an idiot, right? Like if they think that something they're saying makes no sense, you can tell even more than when you're on Zoom, okay? You can read their body language. You can see how they're receiving it. And you can see how they're receiving you, okay? So if you're making an argument, you can tell if the judge is just not buying this, right? And you maybe need to pivot. Or if there's something that you said that they didn't like, that may be a sign that you need to clarify that point, right? Read your judge. One of the biggest mistakes people make is that they don't read the judge. They are like, I want to say this. This is what I have to say. And the judge may be like, they already believed you. They were good. You should have stopped talking 20 seconds ago, because they're ready to give you the objection. And now you've talked to the point where now they're going to overrule you. Okay. And vice versa. So if you can read a judge, a lot of teams aren't going to. Okay. So if they're not reading the judge, you should be, and it will make a big difference, right? If the judge is just not having these objections, they're annoyed that people keep objecting, stop objecting. Unless it's a huge thing, you shouldn't do it, okay? In case of emergency, you can ask to confer with co-counsel. Now, we should almost, I would venture to say just about never do this. But if you have to, if you are standing out here in the middle of cross, you get a weird objection and you have no idea what to say, you are completely lost, you don't even know where to begin, you could say, Your Honor, may I have a moment to confer with co-counsel? You'll say yes. You can walk over to your counsel table, you talk, whisper with your co-counsel, they'll help you. And then you say, Your Honor, this is not hearsay because X, okay? It's not great, right? It doesn't look great for you. But it's better than standing out here with your mouth open with nothing, like you'll get, if you just get where you have not the slightest clue what argument to make. Going to confer with co-counsel and then coming up with something, even if you still don't really know, at least coming up with something that sounds articulate is better than deer in the headlights. Because again, they're watching and they can tell if you have no idea what you're saying. So it's better to say less or confer with co-counsel than to just make shit up on the fly, because they can tell if you're just bullshitting. Okay? When you lose an objection, which you will, do not show it. Okay? It is very easy in the heat of a trial you make an objection, they're making a bad argument, you feel like you make every counter that you could, and the judge still overrules your objection, or they sustain their objection. It can be very easy over the course of a trial, if it keeps happening, to get visibly frustrated, right? Sit back in your chair a little, aggressively, right? Having a scowl on your face, right? Like that's what Brett was talking about with the poker face. If you look like you're pissed at this judge, right? That's bad. Okay. And when you keep losing, everyone's looking to see how you handle it, right? Because again, it's different than on Zoom where it's like, they're looking at you, but then they're looking at the witness, right? Everybody's looking at you. And if you keep losing and you're starting to get more and more frustrated, you're all they're going to watch, right? Then they start asking questions. It's not like on Zoom where, okay, well, they're asking questions right here. Now I'm just going to naturally look at them. If Eva's sitting right there and I'm right here, the witness is over here, and I'm acting a fool right there, she's just going to sit there and keep watching me to see what I'm doing, right? Like, yeah, she can hear this, but like, that's what she wants to pay attention to, right? To see the meltdown that's happening 5 feet in front of her face, right? And they can tell, same thing of, if you're over here, right? It's, you're doing that. They're going to be watching how frustrated you get. Okay. And you have to keep that in mind because that's what's going to be interesting to them of the meltdown or like, if somebody's getting mad, that's real, right? This is mock trial, whatever. Yeah. It's some random question about some stupid piece of evidence, but you're pissed over there. That's what they want to pay attention to. Okay. And that's where you're going to lose points because you can't keep your cool. When the other side is going, you should be helping your co-counsel listen for objections, okay? You want to be listening, and if you hear something, right, like, speculation, right? You just bump them with the elbow or you write a sticky note, right? Elbow usually is the quickest, right? You just give them a little nudge, speculation, right? You just whisper, and that's how you should be helping each other because you both know, right? You should both know the case to where even though it's not your witness, you should know what's speculation, right? And so if your co-counsel misses something, you should be there to help them. All right. On Zoom, it's much different because you could be texting. By the time you get that text out, it's too late. And even if you get it in time, they don't know what you're talking about. Okay. But here it's a lot different, right? You could say speculation. And then when they go to the other counsel, like, okay, why is this not speculation? You can turn down your co-counsel and they can, you can say, oh, he can't testify to what so-and-so thought, right? Like you can help each other a lot more than you can on Zoom, okay? So when you're out here, you're on an island, but when you're at counsel table, you're actually much more of a team than you are on Zoom, okay? So you should help each other at all times because you don't want to have your co-counsel lose points because they missed an objection or two and they got flustered of like, oh, shoot, I missed that one. And now they missed the next one because they're still thinking about the last one. So you got to be there as a catch-all. Evidence. You're all familiar at this point, right? You ask them if they would recognize an exhibit, okay? So, they talk about the pothole, right? Would you recognize a picture of that pothole if I showed it to you? Yes, I would. Then you're going to walk back to counsel table, right? Your co-counsel is going to have the copies ready, okay? You should know your co-counsel's direct. You should probably have them printed out so you can follow along, okay? And you should be ready so that you can hand them the copies, okay? Again, that's little things that most teams won't do, okay? The teamwork of, Travis is here giving his direct examination, right? He doesn't have to go all the way over here, rifle around the counsel table, looking for things while he's nervous, trying to keep his spot, right? Find them, go show opposing counsel, right? He should be able to go get them, right? Or what you do when you're defense, especially, you bring them with you beforehand, right? Bring the copies with you and keep them in your hand or like on the edge of the counsel table, right? Either way, you want to be working together, okay? And if something comes up where like maybe you weren't going to enter an exhibit, but now you've done it because they're objecting to weird stuff, right? Be ready to help each other, okay? Because it can get fat, things can move fast, and it can spin out of control. So help each other, okay? So after you get the copies, okay? I personally prefer to just give opposing counsel a copy instead of just showing them. A lot of people just show opposing counsel and they'll stand there and wait for opposing counsel to look at it. either or, it doesn't really matter. I like to just have an extra copy. All right, and so you tell, Your Honor, I'm giving opposing counsel a copy of what's been marked as Exhibit 1. Give it to them, okay? They have to make sure they look at it, okay? If you're going to give it to the witness, opposing counsel needs to see it, okay? So again, like on Zoom, you don't have that because you're just going to show it to everybody at the same time. Not here. You need to show them before you show the witness, okay? At that point, you're going to announce your approach or ask depending on what the judge's preference is. So if he says, just go ahead and approach the witness, but just let me know what you're doing. Or he might say, ask permission to approach, okay? So you just take it, all right? Your Honor, I'm showing opposing counsel what's been marked for identification purposes as Exhibit 1. Your Honor, I'm approaching the witness with what's been marked as Exhibit 1. Hand that to them, okay? You walk back, you recognize that document. Okay, so that's you go show opposing counsel, then you go to the witness stand, okay? Give the witness the copy. All right, then you're going to lay that foundation. What is it? Is it a fair and accurate representation? Has been changed or altered in any way? Yada, yada, yada. You're familiar with all that verbiage, okay? Your Honor, at this time, the defense enters what's been marked as Exhibit 1 into evidence. Okay? It's admitted. Okay? If you're going to have a demo, so we may have some blow-ups of like a poster, basically, all right? So if you need to have the witness step down to use a demonstrative, all right, Your Honor, at this time, may the witness step down from the witness stand to make use of a demonstrative aid? Say yes, right? You're going to set it up, right? So if you were going to do it in this courtroom, it's a little tough because you want to make sure that the jury can see it and the judge can see it, okay? So here, you're probably going to want to set it like this, okay? Like on an angle, right? So then you're going to have the witness come down. Okay, you're going to stand there. If other team's doing that, you need to be able to see. If you're objecting to that witness, you stand up. Your Honor, may I, Your Honor, may I relocate so that I may see the demonstrative as well? They'll say yes. Okay, so if you're, if it's the prosecution and your defense, you get up. You're going to probably come and stand somewhere like right here or something like that, so that you can also see. Bring your legal pad always, right? Just look like you're taking notes or something, okay? Just blank page too, so that nobody can read what you've been writing, right? But then you just stand there and you just be attentive, okay? And obviously be ready to make whatever objections you might have prepared for that exhibit, okay? When you're done, Your Honor, may the witness return to the witness stand for further questioning. And then when you're done with the exhibit, if you're still moving on with your direct, for example, right, then you're just going to say, you're just put it to the side. You can tell the witness, okay, you can put that aside now or not. Doesn't matter, but you put it to the side. You don't need to do anything with it unless you're going to publish. We're probably not going to publish until the end because we don't want them reading like the text messages. We don't want them reading that while you're trying to ask your next pocket, okay, because they will. They'll read it and then they won't be listening to you, okay? So we wait until the end. At the end of your direct examination, all the documents that you've entered into evidence, right, which you should have in your hand now, Your Honor, permission to approach and tender the exhibits into evidence. Say yes, so you approach. If you have exhibits 1, 7, and 8, give them to them. They'll go here. And then if you want, you'll have another copy. Your Honor, may I publish copies of those exhibits to the jury? They'll say yes. Then you bring the copies and you hand them to the jury. We do that because we don't want them reading those text messages during our direct, but we want them to be reading them during their cross, right? So you give it to them. An inexperienced team will just start their cross, right? What you want to do is you want to wait until they're done looking at them, okay? So you just, Your Honor, cross-examination. Your Honor, may we wait just a second so the jury can finish looking at those exhibits, right? Because you don't want to start your cross if they're not paying attention and they're not ready, okay? Because they may have little notes they want to make about the direct and whatnot. So you just read the room, okay? Just like everything else, pay attention. Is everybody ready for you to start your cross, or are they looking at other stuff, okay? It's your courtroom, okay? So you control the pace, and it's perfectly okay to wait. All right, impeachment by contradiction. So there's going to be 3 steps broadly. You're going to clarify, you're going to confront them, and then you're going to confirm. Okay. So if this is when the witness says something that is not true, right? If they say, if Jolene says, I did not go to the bar that night, okay, that's a contradiction, okay? So we're going to impeach her, okay? So as soon as they say something that's not true, you're going to turn, okay? So if I'm crossing the defendant and she says, I was not at the bar that night, I'm going to turn, I'm going to walk, and you're going to know, because you're going to know that if Jolene says that that's not true. So as soon as I turn, you're going to be ready with copies of her statement. Okay. You're going to mark one, and we're going to have stickies or something, tabs, something to mark them off. And you're going to have it marked, ready to go. Okay. You're going to have one copy that's marked, one copy that's not. So you're going to mark the lines. That's for me, so that I don't need to be rifling through, right? Which I'm sure you've seen on Zoom happens, where people are like, Your Honor, give me a second while I try to find the page or the line number. So your co-counsel is going to have it ready for you. So I'm going to turn. Danielle's going to hand it to me. I'm going to have the statement. Everyone in the room is going to know exactly what I have in my hand. All right. Then I'm going to turn and I'm going to say, is it your testimony here today that you did not go to the bar then? Yes, that's my testimony. You remember giving a sworn statement in this case, correct? You swore to tell the truth in that statement. You recognize that statement if I showed it to you. Again, like I've got it in my hand, so she knows it's coming. As a witness, this should be your oh shit moment, because you do not want to get impeached. So you better damn well be sure that it's in your affidavit, because if you get to this point, you're screwed. At this point, I'm going to impeach her. So there's no turning back. Okay. We'll talk in a second about, sometimes I don't want to waste the time to impeach her. So there's different things you can do. But if you're going to go ahead and do it, all right, you recognize that statement if I showed it to you. Again, I'm going to be holding it up. Everyone's going to know exactly what I got. Okay. All right. And then I'm going to take it. I'm going to show opposing counsel a copy. Because again, anytime you show something to the witness, you have to show opposing counsel a copy. Okay. So you show it to them. Your Honor, I'm showing opposing counsel a copy of the defendant's interrogation with Detective Seymour. Okay. You're gonna look at it and you're gonna just tell them like, lines page 2, lines 12 to 14. Okay. Tell them that, which lines, so that they know, right? Your Honor, I'm approaching the witness with her sworn statement. Sir, Mr. Amont, that's your sworn statement, right? Okay, so this is where we're going to confront her. Okay, this is your statement. You swore to tell the truth. Flip to the last page. That's your signature on the back, isn't it? All right, now, Mr. Tremont, please turn to page 2, lines 12 through 14, and read along silently as I read aloud. Okay? So now you're going to take this opportunity. You're going to read it nice and slow so that everyone can hear, I went to Funky's bar and I got a ride from a friend to Funky's bar that night. Right? When I say, got a ride to Funky's bar that night, I'm delivering that straight to the jury. I'm not even, it's to her, but it's to you. Okay? Then I'm going to look at her. Did I read that correctly? She's going to say yes. Right, so that's when you confirm, right? Did I read that correctly? Everyone in the room has now heard that what she said was just not true. Okay. So then at that point, Your Honor may retrieve the statement from Ms. Tremont, because you don't want her to have her statement up there. You can have her put it aside if you want, but I don't like leaving it up there so that she has it. Okay. So get it, right? Take your time, I'm going to retrieve it from her. So after I said, did I read that correctly? Hand it back to Danielle. So, Mr. Tremont, when you went to the bar, right? I'm gonna milk it so that everyone in the room is like, "Oh, she just got impeached." Because now I'm gonna get scored up. She just hurt her team bad. Okay. Take my time. Give my back to Danielle. She's gonna put it away. Again, making sure it all looks nice and neat, so it looks like a professional, like a machine, right? We just impeached her and it was nothing. Okay. Then we move on with the question. Okay, that's how you do it nice and clean so that there's no airtime. They're probably going to object, hearsay, that it was not a contradiction, to break up that silence. So, because that's what you should do, is object. If they impeach your witness, I mean, if it's that bad, I don't even know if you object, because that's bad. Like if your witness just straight up says, I did not go to the bar that night, and it's plain as day that she did, you're kind of shit out of luck. But if it's something on the fringe where it's like, Detective Seymour, you didn't check the road that night. Well, I did check the road. Oh, well, you didn't see the pothole. Well, no, but I checked the road, and they want to try to impeach to say like, oh, well, there's no potholes mentioned, so you didn't check the road, right? And it's just weird, right? Something where it's like, that's not a contradiction, right? That's where you want to object, because that's where you might actually win with an improper impeachment, okay? But we're not going to do that. We're not going to waste our time with fringe impeachments, okay? So this is only when you're getting like they have clearly contradicted something, okay? Now you're going to have other times where they say something that's just not in the statement, right? You flip through, right? They'll say something, you're like, what? And you're flipping through the statement, right? Trying to find it, and it's not in there, okay? And it may be something big, right? If it's something like very tiny, right? If, Taylor Drift says that her favorite color is purple and it doesn't say it in there, like, who cares, okay? But if they say that, Jake had a pocket breathalyzer that he blew before he got in the truck and it was a .02, right? That's a big deal, right? As defense, you are not going to allow, like, that cannot be allowed to stand, okay? So if they say something that's just not there and it matters, okay? So you're going to do the same thing, right? You're going to go to counsel table, you're going to get your stuff, and you're going to say, again, you got this statement in your hand, right? So that conveys them like you've got the weapon. Like this is their last chance of like, is it your testimony that Jacob Tremont blew a .02 before he got in that truck? Now she's got a decision. She can either backtrack or she can own it, right? If she says, yes, I did. Okay. You remember giving a sworn statement in this case, correct? You swore to tell the truth in that statement. You swore to include all relevant testimony in this case. You'd recognize it if I showed it to you. Yes. Okay. Your Honor, I'm showing, I guess I'll do it this way. Your Honor, I'm showing opposing counsel a copy of this witness's sworn statement. Okay. Your Honor, permission to approach the witness with her sworn statement. Mr. Drift, that's your statement, correct? Flip to the back, that's your signature, right? Yada, yada, yada. Ms. Drift, nowhere in that statement do you ever say that Jacob Tremont blew a .02. Do you? Now they're probably they'll do the flipping through, right? And in person, it's especially because now they're floundering, right? And you just like, and if they want to say, oh yeah, right, like they got it in front of them, so they're gonna have to, right? If they say, oh yeah, it's somewhere in here, right? They're not going to. But then at that point, you might even ask like, where do you see that, right? But you better be damn sure it ain't in here, right? Like if you're going to do this, right? Because if they say, oh yeah, it's right here, page 3, line 15 to 17, and it's there, you just screwed yourself because you look really bad. It looks like you don't know the packet, right? We're going to know the packet. So when we're witnesses, if they do that to us, we can mess them. Okay. So you're only going to do this if you know that it is not in there. And there is no way that they could say that it's in there, right? That's when you do this. Because if they've got it in front of them and they look and they say, no, it's not. Your Honor, permission to approach and retrieve the statement. Again. Ms. Drift, you don't know if he'd been drinking, right, or whatever, right? Then you move into your question, okay? Because again, it's now the witness has just been gutted, right? And they're probably not going to fight you very much the rest of the way because you've now humiliated them. And it's way worse than on Zoom because they are sitting here, everyone's looking at them. They just got humiliated. They're sweating. They're nervous. Their team wants to kill them right now, okay? And so then you move forward and you just keep steamrolling, okay? Threat impeachment. So if the witness says something that contradicts their statement or, could be they never said that before, something like that, right? Anytime where you could maybe impeach them, right? What you can do is same thing, walk to counsel table, you get it, right? Ms. Drift, is it your testimony here today before this jury that you know what Jacob Tremont's BAC was before he died? Right? And when you say it like that, usually they'll realize like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And they'll be like, oh, no, that's not what I meant, whatever, right? Like, but you waved, like, this is a weapon, right? So you use this to scare the shit out of them, right? Because a lot of times they will bend over and say whatever, they'll admit to it, right? Because if you say it in a way that's like, you don't want to impeach, sometimes you want to impeach it, right? So you're not going to quite make as big of a show of it because you want to go ahead and impeach them. Okay, but if you take it and you're Ms. Drift, is it your testimony here today that you know what Jacob Tremont's BAC was, right? And you make sure everybody in the room knows that you got her statement right here. She's gonna most of the time they're gonna be like, oh well, no, I don't. Maybe not. I don't think I do. Right? They're gonna back down. Then you could take it back to counsel table, right? You make it obvious that if they don't answer correctly, you're going to impeach them. Okay. At that point, if you make it clear, like, because once you bring this shit out here, if they double down on it, you have to impeach them. Because if you get out here with this thing, oh, is it your testimony, whatever? And they say, yes, it is. And then you say, okay, well, let's move on, right? It's like, well, what the hell was that? Why did you have this thing, right? So you pick this shit up and you walk out, you better be ready to do it. But if you really don't want to use it, right, you can just put a little extra, be a little extra demonstrative with it, and it'll scare the shit out of the witness because they do not want to get impeached, right? As witnesses, do not get impeached, whatever you do. That is the only thing that you absolutely, under no circumstances, can you ever get impeached, okay? It is a killer, okay? Other teams know that too. So when you have this in your hand, they will probably bend over. But don't take it unless you know for a fact it's not in there. And co-counsel, you should also be looking, right? Because there may be a time where you say, is it your testimony, right? Or you turn to go get the statement from counsel, and, they're looking and they're like, it's in there, right? Like you tell them and then they but you save your co-counsel before they get it and they start acting like an idiot when it's in there, right? You should be ahead of it. So you're looking for them, right? They're going to be doing the same thing. When you hear them say that, the magic words of, is your testimony that so it's such and such and such and such, you should immediately be flipping through the statement, looking to find it in there, right? Because you need to be able to save your witness if in the event that it happens, okay? Because if they get impeached and it's in there, you need to be able to, on redirect, you need to be able to fix it, okay? So preparation is the key, right? It all goes back to the preparation. You better be ready because it's not like on Zoom where you can get into it and you can kind of pull out because, we're all just on computer screens. So you're not really doing anything. You're just standing in the same spot the whole time, right? You're walking around. Everyone's looking at you, all eyes on you. So when you do it, you better be sure, okay? And that's why we prepare, because you're going to be confident. When you do that, you're going to be happy to do it and everyone's going to see it. And that's what scares a witness. Because if you look like you know damn well it ain't in their statement, they're going to be like, oh shit, did I forget that part? Did I haven't read it since like a couple days ago. Like, crap, maybe that actually is in there and we don't talk about it. Sure. Yeah, maybe that's in there. I don't know. Right. And they'll roll over because you can convince them that you know it better than them. And as if they bend over, right, and they capitulate, right, then you take it back, same thing. Okay, so just to be clear, you didn't know what his BAC was at the time he got in that truck, correct? Right, and they're like, no, I didn't, right? And then you move on. Because now everyone knows that they just bent down to you, right? That's witness control. That is, you were confident enough. They said something that you disagree with, and you were confident enough to stand up to them and be like, all right, you want to bet if it's in there? Because I'll bet you my whole team's, outcome in this round that it's not in your statement. and they don't want to lose. So they'll usually bend over. All right. Any questions about any of those things? Right. So body language. When opposing counsel is performing, I recommend highly that you do not watch, like their directs especially. It can be very tempting to sit there and you watch their direct, but there are multiple issues with that. First, it's hard to watch and listen and be ready to object. It's just when you're watching them and you're seeing how they're giving it and you're hearing it, it just, for whatever reason, I find it to be a lot harder to also be picking through every word for, telling if there's an objection, anticipating objection. So I recommend, looking down at your legal pad, listening, but not watching, right? But also from time to time, watch the judge. If you hear something and it's like, you don't quite know, right? It's like something sounds off. Look at the judge, because they may look back at you, right? That they want you to object, because they may have the same inkling. And unlike Zoom, they may look, because they may be like, that sounds objectionable. And they look at you. And if you're over there just mesmerized by the witness, right, they're going to be like, well, this person's not paying attention, right? But if you look at them and you're or sometimes there could be, let's say you have a hearsay, let's say your defense, and they're talking about Jolene Tremont's statements, right? You may have a judge that's not super familiar with the rules of evidence. They know it enough, right? But they don't they don't know all the intricacies, right? And the witness, the detective starts talking about what Jolene Tremont said. You may have a judge that looks at you object, right? But that if you object, they're going to be it's a admission by a party opponent. And the other judges that are over there scoring know that, and they're going to be what an idiot. Why would you object to that? Right? But you did it because this judge looked at you, right? So what you can do is, if you're paying attention, again, you look at the judge, right? You can just give him a little nod, I know, but it's not, right? You just signal to them, you know what's going on, but you're choosing not to object, right? Little things like that matter, because those judges are seeing the same thing, right? Because in the jury box, they see everything, right? That's why they see everything all the time, right? So chances are, when you do that, and they can tell that that you could object, but you're choosing not to, that might score you points. Even though it's no different than if you had no idea or you didn't even think about it and you were just sitting there listening, right? It doesn't make a difference as to what happened in trial, but it will change the way that they perceive you, okay? And so by listening, looking like you're intent, but not like you're mesmerized or it's super interesting. Because if they look at you and you're watching this, right, then they're going to watch that. And we don't really want them to be paying tons of attention. We'd rather they zone out when opposing counsel is going. So if you look like you're just this is the most interesting thing you've ever heard in your life, they're going to be oh, well, I must be missing something here. Let me pay more attention here. Okay. And don't be afraid. You can also look at the jurors too. That's totally okay, right? You can kind of look at them, read them, see how they're feeling, right? Because if you get that kind of a feeling of the judges, or the jurors, the judge, they just are not feeling this witness and what they're doing on their direct, just find something to object to, because they'll be yeah, I kind of felt something was wrong too. I appreciate that you objected because I felt the same way, right? And that's something that's small that you can do, okay? So you don't want to look too engaged, because it makes them pay more attention, okay? As I said, judges will telegraph how they feel about it, right? Whether they do it intentionally, when I judge, I will, if it's something that I really want to be objected to, I'll straight up, I'll stare a hole in the opposing counsel's forehead, right? And if they're not looking at me, they're not paying attention, right? Makes me I don't like it. But I've had rounds where I judge where I looked at and they look back and then they stand up and object. And it's, usually you can tell what the judge wants you to object to, right? So if I really want a character evidence objection, you're I'm going to look, and if I look, if the judge looks at you and you can tell when they look and they're you better stand your ass up right now. And oh, they want me to object to character evidence. And if it's oh, I could make this character. We weren't planning on it because it's not that big of a deal. We were just going to let it go. If the judge stares at you and he's like, get your ass out of your seat, get your ass out of the seat and object, right? Vice versa. If you stand up and object and the judge is like, what is it? What do you have to say? Why are you ruining this? Sit down. And that's kind of the vibe. Pull it back. Okay. But how the judge sits there and listens to they're here for 3 hours, right? Nobody can sit there and completely, maybe like Brett. Brett as a judge probably would just sit there and you'd have no read the entire trial. But most of the time, you'll be able to pick up small things and use it, right? Use it to your advantage, okay? That's why we prepare, because we're not worried about, I need to make sure I get my cross, I remember this pocket. I got to cross next. I hope I can get that last question right. We need to have all that stuff settled so that you can just be in the moment, paying attention. Your material is lock solid, okay? I personally if you can subtly do something that draws their attention away, right? If they're at a really good point, right? Flip your next page of your notes, start writing something, right? Just a little bit, right? Not obnoxious, right? You don't want to be obnoxious, right? But just little things like that just, if you're sitting right here, okay, and they're like, this is a great direct, right? Shuffle some papers or something, right? Because you're right here. So they're going to look at you, right? And they're not looking at them. They're not listening to the witness, right? Little tiny things. And you'll have some judges that know that it's the gamesmanship, right? And so they'll respect it, because things like that, most people don't do and they don't pay attention, right? But they know, right? They'll be able to tell, you just don't want me to pay attention to this. And I'm not now. Now I'm thinking about you. But they may not notice it. It's probably going to be a net. Read the room, right? Everything it goes back to. If you've got some hard ass stickler judges, don't, right? But if you have judges that are you can tell they're really engaged, they're you can tell that that's something that they would pick up on. Don't be afraid. Write down direct quotes. When they're testifying, your witness is direct, or their witness is direct, and you're about to cross, right? And they say some shit that that you're going to talk about. Write it down on your legal pad, and if you want, use it as a prop, okay? Because then when you get up there, right, you can bring your legal pad up, right? This is not notes, right? We don't use notes, right? But if you're you want to start your direct with, you start with some, right? It's the detective, and let's say your first pocket is about at the scene, right? And he says something particularly noteworthy that is that really stood out to you, right? Write it down, bring the legal pad up. Detective, I want to start by talking about the investigation that you did at the scene. Now, on direct examination, you said, right? And then you take it and you put it back at counsel table, right? And you say, now, that isn't true, is it? Or now you did that. You say you did that after you looked at the tread marks or whatever, right? It makes it look like they usually will be able to see when you wrote it down too. When you're writing it down, don't be discreet, right? Write it down, right? You're paying attention and then you're writing it down. They're going to take note of that. And then when you get up there and you use it, you're paying attention. Even if that's the cross point that you make every time, right? Maybe something that it's already in your cross and that they're going to say it every time. They don't know. They don't know that. They don't know that it's already in your cross. So you make it look like you are paying attention, and you are paying attention, right? It's just you've anticipated it because we prepare more than everybody else. Okay. So if you can write it down, right? Higher level thing of what people sometimes do is you make it look like you're writing it down, right? You have blank page. Right? And you say, and you read it. And then you kind of casually kind of hold it up. It's when you're talking, so they can see that there is nothing on this sheet of paper, right? That I know this case like the back of my hand. I remember what they said. And I'm just purely using this as a prop. That shows, because they'll be they will respect that. because they know that that's how prepared you are, and that's how much you're paying attention, that you don't even need to have taken a note because you remember it, and you're purely doing this for the jury, right? Little things like that you can weave in. Don't have to, but that is something that you can do. That is like just a little extra for the jury. All right. So when opposing counsel is this the same? Okay. So your voice. Well, what I forgot to mention, when your own team's performing, what you need to do is you need to be actively engaged, right? Same thing we talked about with you reading their statement, right? Following along their direct. You need to know beforehand which documents you might need, okay? But you should be doing the opposite of all the things that I told you just now about when the other team's performing, right? You want to be actively engaged, because if I'm giving my direct and Danielle's sitting right here, right? You don't want them paying attention to you, right? Like you want them to be paying attention to me and my witness, right? Vice versa, okay? So you got to be paying attention. You got to look like you're really engaged, like this is the greatest thing you've ever heard, okay? Little things like that, because it shifts the attention away from you. It makes them pay attention to the direct. Give them nothing to distract, okay? All right, so your voice. Be loud. The best teams are really, 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 really fucking loud. I don't know exactly why it works, but it does. I think it probably makes you more confident in the same way, like, how you stand up, how you walk around. It just, when you talk loud, it's a lot harder to be nervous if you're projecting and you're really vocalizing, okay? Don't yell. So you need to project, okay? You need to talk, like if you've ever gone to like a play, right? And there's, there's an actress on the stage that is whispering or something, but they do it in a way that everyone in the room can still hear them, but they're whispering, right? That's what I'm talking about. Of like, it needs to come from deep inside where you're projecting, but you're not yelling, okay? Because when you're quiet, it makes it seem like you're nervous, like you're intimidated, right? If you're loud and you're confident, you're going to be loud and confident, right? It's going to change. You can't be nervous and talk really loud. It's really hard to do. And so it kind of makes your body do what you need to be doing, right? It makes you confident, and it can kind of ease your nerves a little bit, because when you talk quiet, it can be very easy to kind of, well, Your Honor, it's not hearsay because it's a statement by a party opponent, versus, Your Honor, this is not hearsay because it's a statement by a party opponent, right? And be loud, right? Like you should be very, very, very loud. Where in the beginning, like they notice that you're talking loud, because most teams are not going to meet you, and you'll be able to tell the difference if they will sound quiet. And if they sound quiet, they don't sound as confident. Okay, so you need to make sure that you always are speaking up so that everybody can hear you. Like the way I've been talking in this is probably still too quiet. Okay, it needs to be loud. They need to feel your presence. Okay, when they look down to take their notes, it needs to be, they still feel you when you're talking. They know you're there, right? When you hit those big points, they're gonna look, because they can't not look, because your voice fills the room. Okay. So you can use it as a weapon to gain points when you sound like you know exactly what the hell you're talking about, and they sound timid and scared. So when you're on an objection and objection, Your Honor, hearsay, and they say, well, Your Honor, this is a statement by a party opponent. Your Honor, this is not a statement by a party opponent because such and such and such and such. It may be that they're 100% right. But if you are like, you sound like you just believe it in your bones and you're loud and confident, they may give it to you, or they may give you the point. They may overrule your objection, but they'll score them down, because they'll be like, you had the right answer, but you acted like you weren't sure if you had the right answer, right? Whereas they had the wrong answer, but like, I believed them, right? You can convince people of things just by the way you say it, even if you're wrong as hell. Okay. And in person, it really matters because they're in here, right? They see you and they feel you, right? And they don't know what the right answer is either, right? Most of the time they really don't. They think, but then if that person who has what they think is the right answer sounds like don't know what they're talking about, but you are convincing, they may be like, oh, I'm probably wrong. I haven't taken evidence in 20 years. So, sustained. Because who cares what the actual rules are, right? If that judge sustains our objection, awesome. We're right, even if we're wrong. Okay. So every time you speak, you need to project, you need to be loud, you need to be confident, without exception. All right. Anything with that? Any questions? Okay. Do you guys need a little break? I think we're not that far from the end. Does anybody need a break for a minute? No.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Objecting. So strategically, we're going to want to object to break their flow. Occasionally, you'll do this on Zoom, but it is night and day different in person, okay? If they're on direct and this thing is just humming, right? It's squeaky clean. There are no objections, right? And it's just like, you'll get this helpless feeling of like, shit. You can almost hear the points racking up as they move through this direct, right? Figure it out. Find something. Right? You got to find something to object to. Okay. Lack of foundation is always a good one. Okay. Because you're not actually getting anything kept out. It's not really that big of a deal. They may just be like, okay, yeah, counsel, just go ahead and ask a couple foundational questions before you get there. It's a harmless objection, but it stops them in their tracks. It breaks their momentum, right? They have to start from square one. Okay. What it can also do is when you are in person, right, and you're on an island, you don't have anything in front of you. If you got to sit here and now stop, you're flowing, and out of nowhere you get this random stupid objection, then you argue it out with them, you win. I don't remember my next questions. And that's something that we're going to have to work on, especially with the memorization, where you know it beyond just having the questions memorized, because if you get into a lengthy objection, it's so easy to like, all right, I won the objection. And then it's like, shit. I have no idea where I was. And now you're screwed because you're out in the middle. Or the witness may have the same thing where the witness may forget, right? And just by throwing out a bullshit objection, you can make them look really bad. Because yeah, sure, it's easy when you're flowing with your witness, no objections, the thing you've done 1,000 times. Yeah, it sounded great. And I was ready to give you a 10. Oh, then you got a softball objection, you got objected to, and then it all fell apart, right? Then it was rocky and, you were stumbling and you don't even need to do anything, right? Then you kind of step back and they're struggling just to get to the next Q&A. And now you can see the judges are just like, okay, so this was just scripted. And then when they got thrown a little bit off the script, you could tell a massive difference, okay? At the very least, they have to start from square one. They're no longer in that rhythm. So even if they remember, it's not going to flow. You can't just jump right back into it usually. It's very difficult. And so you can do that, and judges will notice, right? They'll notice that you did that, and they'll know why you did it. Because you don't want it to be there, because if everyone's in the room just captured by this, bad for us. We don't want that, okay? You get them flustered. All right, on cross-examination, right, if your witness is up there and same thing, this cross is airtight and they are just absolutely slaughtering your witness, and your witness is doing their best, but it's just, this cross is just fantastic, okay? You need to help your witness, okay? You need to just object to anything, right? They may say, you're not looking to get it sustained, but give your witness a chance to breathe. Because once a cross gets the momentum going, as a witness, it's almost impossible to get out of it, right? Unless the crossing attorney fucks up, it's going to be really difficult to stop them once again. So you need to give your witness a chance to breathe, to think about where is he going with this. All right, okay, this is what he's going to do. This is what I'm prepared to say. Like, okay, overruled. continue with your cross counselor. And then they ask you, now you're good. Now you're good. There's no longer that just crushing momentum. And that's how, as an attorney, you help on a bad cross, right? On Zoom, it's difficult because you don't have a feel for the room. Nobody really knows if you're objecting for that purpose or if you're just making a stupid objection. But if everyone in the room can feel the momentum and then you object, it gets overruled. And now you can feel a difference in the room. There's no longer that that tension and momentum anymore. They know, even if they don't consciously know it, they can tell the difference. Okay. It's not going to be as bad. On Zoom, you can get scored down a lot more often because they're like, that was stupid. Why would you do that? Right. But in person, they can tell. They know, oh, your witness is getting absolutely killed right now. And, oh, you stopped him. And then we came back and then your witness was good. Your witness held up after that. That's a good job, right? That's how you can score points. You didn't actually do anything that is being scored, right? You don't get scored for that, but it'll go towards your direct score. They may score you up a point just for looking out for it, right? Or if you did something stupid that they were going to take you down a point for, yeah, maybe they let it go, right? And so that's how you can get. You'll never quite know for sure. It's not like they're going to write on there like +1 for this, but you will score points when you do that. Okay. It also helps remind everybody that you're alive. Okay. If it's direct and they're just doing their thing and you're over here and nobody's looking at you and everybody's looking that way, right? Stand up and object to something. It's like, oh yeah, right. Travis is, Mr. Red is, I forgot he's doing this. Okay. All right. Yeah, I heard him. All right. That's a decent argument. Like, all right. Now they're paying attention to you, right? Because if they get to the end of the direct and it's like, who's doing this cross again? I don't even know. Oh, okay. Mr. Red, I forgot he even existed, right? That's bad. You don't want that, right? So you gotta let them know that you're alive, right? That was the number one comment that Joseph Bias made at the end of the internal final between me and Molly Sue's teams. That me and Eva didn't object, and Molly Sue and Morgan didn't object. That case didn't have any really good objections, and me and Molly Sue were kind of waiting to see if we were going to object, and then neither of us did. But that was his number one comment, was like, I want to hear something, right? They want to hear an objection, even if it's like, lack of foundation. They want to hear from you. They want to see that you're paying attention. And that's, if you sit there and you do nothing for the whole thing, you don't want to do it. You should try to object at least one time. Okay, that should be your goal, to show that you're listening. If there's really nothing, okay, but try to find something decent. Okay. And it also, you don't want them to have the spotlight the whole time too. They're just going to keep scoring points. If they have the spotlight the whole time, they're going to be scoring points left and right. Okay. Direct and cross, where to stand. So on direct, you want it to be where the focus is on the witness. Okay. So you want to be, honestly, the best, if you could even almost be back here, right? This is ideal because the jury, right? How you guys are looking at me right now, but then if I got a witness up there, right? You're going to eventually, you don't want to do the tennis back and forth, right? So then you're going to just stay looking up there, and just my questions are just going to kind of come out of the sky, right? And I don't want you looking at me, okay? So you want to be back there so that all their focus is on up here, okay? That being said, there may be times during your direct where you maybe want to draw attention to something. So you might, let's say you really want to, you want to enter an exhibit, but you want to make it a point that this is a big deal, right? You may come up, right? Get the documents. Now, Ms. Drift, what can you tell us about those text messages that you got from the unknown, right? It kind of draws it in that oh, this is really important, right? You don't have to do it, but it's something just every once in a while you might want to do if there's something really big you want to draw attention to. Because it's oh, he's now back in the picture. Why is he back in the picture? This must be important. On cross, it's the opposite. We don't want them watching them, right? We want them, we're the star, right? You're the star. This is your cross-examination, right? It's why we don't ask questions really on cross. We kind of just give statements to them and they just confirm, right? So you're going to be here, okay? You want it to be where the witness has to do, right? Witnesses, you want to deliver your answers to the jury, okay? So if as the witness, right, if I'm sitting here and I got to look for the question, answer, question, answer. They may get lazy and they're just going to answer back to you, right? But it makes it uncomfortable for them. And when they're not looking at the jury, right? If the jury is looking at the witness and the witness is looking at me, they're going to look at me, right? For the same reason when you're at counsel table and their direct is going, if you're looking at their witness, and they look at you, they're going to look at their witness. So we don't look at them, right? So you want the witness looking at you here, okay? In the center, okay? You're going to move emphatically, okay? You're not going to wander. You're going to intentionally move at points to emphasize what you're saying, okay? When you have a big question, you want to be delivering it directly here. I'm asking the witness this question, but I am saying it to you, right? And Ms. Tremont, you wore a disguise to that bar, didn't you? You were furious at your husband, weren't you? Right? Like you almost like on those big points, right? Like, you know, and then you went out to the parking lot. And that's where you saw Jake's pickup truck, right? Like just to the jury, like you're talking straight to them, okay? And if you're in the middle here, everyone's looking at you, right? And if you're looking at them, they're going to naturally look back at you. And so that's a big thing to do with your big points of like, it really makes it, because if they're like, you know, looking down, they're writing notes and they're kind of half listening, half like trying to keep track, right? But if you are kind of like, then they hear your voice like coming directly at them. Again, something you can't have on Zoom, right? You can tell by my voice if I'm talking this way, and then when I'm talking directly at you, you can just tell. So if you're looking down and then you hear me start talking directly to you, you're going to look up, and then they're going to be listening. And that's what we want to do on the biggest points. Now, we don't want to do our whole cross like this because then it loses its impact because it really doesn't mean anything. So that's why, you know, you kind of stand here. So you can kind of, you're open to the jury. You want to be open to them, but like you can kind of be where you're facing the witness at times, then you can kind of pivot. Now, what will happen when you're killing their witness is, you know, if we're prosecution, right, we got a defense witness, he's getting absolutely slaughtered, you know, me, Detective Huntsman, or whatever his name is, Dr. Huntsman, right, and I'm just getting killed, and it's like, I don't even know, like, I need to get out of this, right? I'm going to be looking over there, like, I'm going to start looking, you know, help me, right? I'm going to look to Travis. I'm, you know, looking, and that's what they'll do. They'll look because they like, I don't really know how I should answer this, right? And you want to be careful. You don't want to get caught giving answers to your witness, okay? But there are ways that you can let your witness know, right? Like, usually you could tell, like, if I look over, I should be able to tell whether or not you want me to say this or not. So what we do is, right, to avoid all of that, because we don't know if the judges are going to necessarily see it or not, right, is, you know, if I can, especially if I can tell that that's kind of what's going on, I'm going to be right here. You are not going to be looking at your counsel. You're going to be looking right at me, and they can't help you now, right? Like you cut off their lifeline, right? That's their support. They now can't see their witness, right? They're going to be looking around, like if they're trying to look around to see their witness, right? You might have a team that objects and is like, Your Honor, I can't see my witness, and then just makes them look petty, right? So for the most part, you just cut them off, right? Because they're looking for help. They're trying to get help because you're killing them, and they have no idea what to do, and they want help. So we block it off, right? And so that's what you can do in the meantime, especially in those middle pockets when you're really gaining your momentum, right? Stop them from looking to counsel table, okay? Our witnesses, we don't want to be doing that, but you want to be subtle with it, right? Like if it's really going somewhere and you really don't know what to do, like you just have to be subtle, right? Because again, with the rules, they're looking at you all the time, right? And that goes for witnesses, I must add. When you're sitting, you know, you're going to be sitting back there, right? You need to be in character, so to speak, right? Like if you're a witness, right? If you're Taylor Drift and you're sitting there yawning or whatever, you know, like they're going to be like, what the your boyfriend is dead. Like this is his murder trial and you're over here yawning. Like, you know, or the detective, right? It's like, this is serious. Like, you're going to try to put a woman away and you're bored. Like, it just looks bad, right? And like, if you have the defendant, especially, I think it goes without saying, if you call the defendant and the defendant's over there and looks bored as hell, it's like, you're supposed to be on trial for your life. Like, no way. Witnesses don't get scored in these competitions, but it matters, right? It matters. When that witness takes the stand, it's like, I don't believe a fucking word that you're saying. You were just yawning 2 seconds ago, and now you want me to believe the love of your life was brutally murdered and you're so upset about it? Like, no, I'm sorry, I don't believe you, right? And that could hurt your direct score, because if they don't believe your witness, if they hate your witness, your direct score is going to suffer. It usually goes pretty in lockstep with, if they like your witness, you're going to score well. And so that's the main thing to keep in mind. Okay. All right. So on statements, this we will definitely work a lot more on, because there is so much stuff that goes into this. Okay. We're trying to, just go broad picture here so that we can get into and you guys can apply it yourselves. Okay. So first, it's different for us because we were going to be online first, so we couldn't really do this, but you should have a plan for how you're going to move. Okay. You should write your content with an idea of how you're going to move. Okay. So generally you want to have a shape. Okay. So triangles most common. Okay. So you kind of in your mind create a triangle in the middle of the well. Okay. 3 points, right? And so I might decide, okay, this is going to be the top of the triangle. Okay. So I'm going to start, when I go in, I start my opening, I'm going to be at the top of the triangle, right? And then when I transition to my first paragraph, right, you're going to move with your body to signal that you're moving points. Okay. You want to be still, right? You want to be tall, confident, right? You don't want to be shifting your weight. Okay. You don't want to be, shifting your feet around, anything like that. You want to be still, right? Confident, minimal movement, right? Hand gestures are going to be fluid, right? Don't do this where some people will emphasize every single syllable with the hand gesture and their hands bouncing around, and this gets distracting and it minimizes it, right? So we want to have smooth, sustained hand gestures that emphasize exactly what we're trying to say. Okay. And then if I'm going to move on, I'm going to do, natural transition, right, to my front right point on my triangle, kind of angle myself a little this way, right? And then members of the jury, you heard about what happened when they got to the parking lot. They got in the truck and they started driving. Right? And that's when he hit the pothole, members of the jury. So when you go, you don't want to turn your back on the jury. In a well as tight as this, you may have to be angled, like you want to try to keep your shoulders open as much as you can. This would be something where we would take this into account before trial, right? We realize, like, if you kind of had practiced it in a well that was kind of like this, where it was short but wide, right? You may have more, where you're going more side to side, and it might be easy. But now when you try to do it in here, you're going to basically be walking like this. Okay, don't want to do that. Don't want to turn your back on the jury unless you are intentionally doing it, and that almost never happens. Okay. The only time that I've ever really seen it done well is if it's and members of the jury, he died because the defendant killed him. But even then, you want to try to keep your posture open to the jury. Okay. Because you don't want to turn your back on. It's disrespectful, and people don't like having people turn their back on them generally. Okay. So now you want to match. So let's say you want to plan it out beforehand of all right, every time. So we did this with me and Eva did this for intern, right? Every time that we talked about the actual collision itself, we were right here at plaintiff's table where the plaintiff is sitting, right? She got hit by a motorcycle right here. So every time we talked about the motorcycle getting hit, we were right here. Eva did it in an opening. We tried to do it direct. We didn't do it, obviously, because you don't want to be right here, right? But cross, we tried to be right here. On my closing, I was right here. So that subliminally, every time we stood right here, we're talking about the crash, right? And so it ties it in with the jury. We don't want to use that spot for anything else, right? That's the only thing we use this spot for. And little things like that. If you have 3 pieces, it's like 3 words to your theme. For example, you can have 1, 2, 3, right? And when you explain each element of your, of your theme, you do 1, 2, 3. And every time you talk about them, you're in those 3 spots. And if you're not in those 3 spots, you don't talk about them individually. You might broadly give them 3 together, but if I'm talking about, a Mustang, a message, and a mark. That's a Ben Wallace one from Top Gun, right? If I'm talking about the Mustang, I'm right here. If I'm talking about the message, I am right here. And if I am talking about the mark, I am right here. And that is it. I only talk about them right here. And what you will do is by the time you get to closing argument, when you go to that spot, it will subtly, they will unconsciously already kind of know, right, what you're talking about. Or if I'm standing right here in closing and I'm talking about something that Eva talked about right here in this spot in openings, they'll remember, right? If we say something similar, it will tie it back to that, right? And so what we do is we try to use hand gestures, same hand gestures for things, right? The more similarities you can tie to the points and anchor them to more and more things, it will make them remember things like your theme, the elements of the charge, whatever big point you want to make. If you can anchor it to where you're standing, how you're standing, the hand gestures you're making, the tone of your voice, the more you can tie those things up, the more it'll resonate with the jury, where like, I've heard this before. He was standing, his co-counsel was standing right there, right? They're 5 feet in front of you, right? So they remember, oh yeah, I was looking this exact, it's like deja vu. And if you can do that, they will remember it. But if we're all over the place, right? Like, and it's nothing is the same at all, they might remember it, but it's not going to be as easy to give it a call back, right? To where I can start talking about the crash right here, and I don't need to give like a little intro to what I'm about to talk about, because you already kind of know what I'm talking about, because she already told you this in openings, right? And so we also did where when the defendant left his grandma's house, right? Like I started up here, like that's what I tried to do, is climb the pocket, climb the well, so that I can move up and right. And I tried to, in my closing especially, I tried to tie the different portions of Carson Gray, or whatever his name was, the points of his travel, so that this became the road that they crashed on, right? And then I did the same thing when we went to the big courtroom. I had to adapt because this versus that one was very different. But in doing that, I don't need to say like now I am acting out the trip of Carson Gray, and here's all the points, right? So like here was when he sees the people coming out of the bar, and that's what was the name of the bar? Montana Max's was right there, right? So every time we talk about Montana Max's, it was like right there, right behind our table, right? So that this is the crash. And so it kind of ties it in the jury's mind. They can almost see it happening in front of them. And so little things like that you can do, again, it shows that you have the command. You're not just moving because you're changing a point, but you're doing it on purpose, right? Why did you go right instead of left, right? Why are you staying right there versus over here? They may not actually pick it up. And if they do, great. You're going to get extra points for that, for the attention to detail. But if not, they're just going to follow you better. They're not going to have to think as much. They can just listen, because they're not thinking like, well, what is he talking about? What does he mean by that? Whatever. Because they're already going to almost have those. They're going to know the context of what I'm saying without me even having to say it. Okay. You want to make sure you give yourself room for whatever gestures, right? So if I want to gesture to a defendant in this paragraph, right? I don't want to be standing right here, right? Because how do I, right? Do I like turn like this, or like there's no good way from this spot to like point at the defendant, right? And that can be very effective to point at the defendant. So I'm going to plan. If I want to point at the defendant, I probably want to be over here, right? Or maybe I want to be back up here, right? Because then I can pivot and I can point at the defendant, and it's natural, right? And so when you plan it out like that, and you kind of anticipate where you're going to be when you do certain things, and you kind of, when you do your memorization, you should memorize, you should do it that way. Even if you do it like in front of your mirror and it's like a miniature, your bedroom is smaller version, practice it in different size settings, because you may get in Lexington, there are some of those probate courts that the well is, I'm not kidding you, probably like here and like here. Like there's no room because they don't do trials in there. right? It's for like, whatever the hell they do in like family court, probate court, all that stuff that I don't care about at all. But it's like a tiny, right? But then like the undergrads had a competition there, and like I judged around in there, and it's like they had to be able to maneuver in this little tiny itty bitty well where like we're right on top of each other. It helps because if you've done it in all these different places, right, you kind of know, all right, I need to be like this, right? You may be in a courtroom and it's flipped, right? The jury box is over here, right? Prosecution's over here, right? You need to be able to know, okay, well now instead of going right, maybe I need to go left or, whatever, right? Maybe there's just the way it's set up is very bizarre. You get some weird setups, okay? That's why this courtroom's good because this is not a normal, like these council tables being so close. That's why like when we competed, I pushed these back. Like I came here before and I pushed all this stuff as far back that way as possible. Like we were almost at our backs to the bar because I wanted as much space as possible, right? But this may be literally how much space you have wide. And so you need to be able to maneuver and be able to go deep, okay? And same thing as the defense, it's right, like you want to be able to, we have no burden here today, right? You maybe want to gesture to your table, hands up, right? Like we don't have any burden here today. We don't have to prove not one single thing to you, but we did. We called 2 witnesses for you and they told you X, Y, Z. Lastly, use the well, okay? This is something that even a lot of experienced attorneys don't really do that much. Use as much of it as you can, okay? It's yours, all right? If you give your statement, right, and if I stay here, right, and I'm just all in this area right here, right, I'm not using the rest of that, okay? It conveys that, it's nervousness or that you're timid, right? Much more so than, right, if I walk all the way back here, right, and I'm talking and I'm way back here in the well, and I'm walking up, right, and I'm using the entire space, right, it just conveys that, like, this is mine, right? This is my well, I'm using how I want, right? The spreading out shows confidence, right? It shows that you're in control. This is your space, right? Don't be afraid to walk around because a lot of people, they get nervous, right? And they want to stay right. Like, especially if you're prosecution, it can be really easy. Like, I don't want to go over, like the other team's over there, right? Like, I don't want to go over there, right? Like, or what some defense teams will do, right? They'll just kind of stay right up here, right? Because to come up here, right? Like, this is kind of their area, right? The prosecution gets to be buddy with the jury. And it's like, it's a little scary to like step up in their space, right? And as defense, right, you may want to touch their table, right? The burden is on this table and it never leaves members of the jury, right? I did that because in our civil case, they accepted a burden, right? And I did that in the semis and T about bit my hand off, right? I came over and like, but the jury, and I touched our table and it's like, but it's not the only burden. I walked over here and I was like, there's another burden on this table too, right? The fact that I'm like she wanted to bite my face off because that's their table, right? Now that's a bit aggressive and maybe a little over the top, especially for the case. But in general, right, like there may be a case where it's appropriate. But stuff like that of like touching it shows like this is mine, right? Like I don't care if this is their table, like this is where the burden is, right? It's confidence. So little things that you do like that, they notice because. Right, like I promise you that Colin was our judge, who was my coach, and like I knew Colin, and so like I knew that I was going to get a rise out of Tia when I did that, and that everyone in the room would know it, and so like that's part of the reason I did it. It's gamesmanship stuff, and I went a little far with it, but things like that, everyone notices, right? And so like if you touch things and you can do it right, tastefully, and read the room, it can really help you because it shows like you really are just like, this is yours. Like you're confident, you own this shit. Like this is, you're dominating, right? People that are nervous don't do that stuff, right? The person that's nervous is not going to go over, the defense counsel that's nervous is not going to come over here and say, members of the jury, their burden is the burden's on this table right here, right? You know, Mr. Esposito, Ms. Darrow, they are the ones that have to prove things to you today, right? We, and the defense, we don't have to prove anything here today. We don't have to call any witnesses. We don't have to enter any evidence. We don't even have to ask a single question, right? We could sit here till the end of trial and ask you to return a verdict of not guilty. But we're not going to do that, right? We're going to stop them at every step of the way, right? You're kind of right. You're showing that you're not afraid of them. And that's kind of, again, you don't want to be too much, right? You don't want to go too far. You don't want to ever overstep. But little things like that, you can show that you're not afraid, that you're confident, and that you are prepared to whoop their ass, okay? And that's what people don't do, okay? So you want to try to move in every direction at some point in your statement, right? You don't want to just keep getting closer and closer and closer and closer and then end, right? Could be a situation where you may be effective, but I would say in general, you want to show that you can move in every direction and, if possible, try to use every corner of the well, right? Not like just for no reason, right? Like find a reason. If there's no reason to like go back over here, right, and that's fine. But in general, if you kind of have that mindset of like, all right, can I touch all the four corners? Yeah, all right, then I will. Okay. So to wrap it up, remember the rules, okay? Everything that you do is being watched. And if they don't watch it, they don't notice, so be it. But if you take that approach, you'll always be all right, okay? You'll always be able to get through whatever the hell they throw at you, okay? Know the packet, trust your preparation, trust your gut, and have fun. It's so much fun. It's so much fun. Like when I tell you, you know, a cross-examination, like dominating a witness, like right in front, like actually dominating that person right there, and then sitting your ass down and watching them squirm as their attorney tries to come up here and like rehabilitate them, and they're just a dead body at this point, right? It's fun. It's fun. Like just, you know, going up there and all the stuff that you prepare for, executing it, like it is. There's nothing like it. It is just, it's an adrenaline rush and it's fun as hell. And so I can promise you that much, that you will have way more fun doing this than you will ever have doing a Zoom trial. And that I have absolutely no hesitation in saying that. So with that, any questions?
When we gonna get started?
Good question. All right, let's see.
Will you share that presentation with us?
Yes. So I'm going to